Sebring International Raceway, it is a site for the very first weekend for Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America. Welcome in, everyone. It's race number 2 of the weekend. Race number 1 was exciting for the 4 different classes. The fans on top of their motorhomes, on the scaffolding, anywhere they can get to get a look at this racetrack and these magical machines. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Brian Till, along with Ryan Marine. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for spending your afternoon with us, and some great racing in store as the sun beginning to set a little bit lower in the sky there in Central Florida at Sebring International Raceway. We talk about this racetrack. It is so historic, and the stories that have been told here over all the years are absolutely magical. Originally a B-17 training base back in World War II, turned into a 3.7-mile racetrack, 17 corners. Some magical names there that you see on the different turns. Turn 1, a good place for passing, but it is bumpy. You can get it done, but you got to be brave. Good outbraking into turn 7, turn 10, 11, 12, 13, really kind of the rhythm section of this racetrack. Get over to the back straightaway, and it is Sunset Bend, that long run down that World War II landing strip, and to turn 17, where the sun, when it gets low, it is in your eyes for sure. And that's a lap around Sebring International Raceway. Talk about the bumps around here. They are certainly a part of the story. So are the different pavement levels that are here. There are probably 30 different pavement changes around this racetrack, and they add to the allure and the challenge that is Sebring. Lamborghini Super Trofeo Huracan Evo 2 is headed out onto the racetrack. But before we get to race number 2 of the weekend, take a look back at race number 1. The number 1 of Danny Framal leads in that blue and black Lamborghini at the wave of the green flag. Wayne Taylor Racing well represented here, and he gets a good run into turn 1. It doesn't take long for the action to start. Adrian Kunzel in the 42, then Clay Wilson, Rocky Bulldog. They get caught up in an incident in turn 7. Then Tyler Hoffman on his own. Welcome back to motorsports, Tyler. He's been there as a coach for the last several seasons. Good to see him back in a car. And some action here. Sebastian Carrazzo with a spin over in turn 14 in his 46. Nick Grote, certainly a lot of experience, and he's going to take the win in LB Cup. Another win for him. Brendan Leach wins in Pro-Am. Good run there. Glenn McGee, another winner, past champion. He knows how to get it done. And from the pole to the checkered flags, the number 1 from Wayne Taylor Racing, and newcomer Hampus Eriksson takes the number 1 Lamborghini to the checkered flag. Another win for Wayne Taylor Racing. As I said, Brian Till along with Ryan Marine. Ryan, saw a good one yesterday. I love the 4-class format of Lamborghini Super Trofeo.
Yeah, it was great yesterday. Wonderful show that we had on display for the 50-minute race. And Wayne Taylor Racing came away with some hardware, didn't they?
Yeah, they
3
did.
wins in 3 of the 4 classes. I mean, just outstanding stuff. And today, what's interesting is for the 2 driver lineups, the starting driver, the finishing driver, it's reversed from yesterday. The opposite driver also qualified for race number 2. So it's a mixed-up grid. We're going to have comers and goers, and everyone, of course, in the same car. So you see the classes all mixed up with one another as well, which should make for a lot of fun over 50 minutes here at Sebring.
4 different classes of competitors. I don't want to call it cars because the Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2 is the base for all of these drivers, and different experience levels. You'll notice the different classes by the colors that are in the upper right side of the windshield, left side when you look at it from outside, right side to the driver, and on the rear bumper, a little color, a triangle on the windscreen and a little rectangle on the back. Orange is Pro, yellow is Pro-Am, green is Am, and blue is LB Cup, and a problem early for the 27, and I'm thinking that may keep us from going green this first time by.
I think you're right. That's David Hodge, who is in strife here, and it's been a difficult weekend for David. They've ended up having to switch which entry he was in. He was initially set to run solo as an AM class entry, had a problem with that car, got shifted over with the Alliance Racing team into this number 27 car, which moved it from the Pro class to the Pro-Am class. alongside Cole Kleck. He replaced Cole Loftsgaard in that machine, and now more misfortune for him and for the team. And I think you're spot on. The clock might start, but I don't think we'll see a green flag as the safety crew has some work to do.
Yeah, they'll try to move that stricken Lamborghini out of the way. Lights still on the Lamborghini Urus pace car. And the field will have to do one more lap. All kinds of places to tuck cars here at Sebring. It's one of the beautiful things about the layout here. You can get cars out of the way relatively quickly, and I'm sure that the very efficient safety crew here at Sebring International Raceway will do that with the 27. So no green this time, but expect the clock in the upper left side of the screen there. If you're watching at home, expect the clock to start when they cross the line, and indeed it does.
Well, not the way you want to start race number 2, but it gives everyone a little bit more time to work the hand-cooked tires, bring them up to the operating temperature, and think through how they want to attack the start of this race. Hopefully a little cleaner than the start that we had yesterday, but everyone looking forward to the challenge that is Sebring. This place is a classic, as you laid out earlier, Brian. Opened in 1950, the first race held here New Year's Eve day in 1950. It's been home of the Sebring 12-hour now for 73-odd years, and then, of course, home of the first ever U.S. Grand Prix as well. So much racing history in this venue, and you feel it when you walk through the gates.
It really is kind of a magical place, and you just ran through a whole lot of the stories and the history that are at this racetrack or that have come from this racetrack. And every year that we come for the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring, which is the basis of this event where we are this weekend, 73 years they've run that event, and every year history continues to be being made. This is what they call the back pit, or one of the short pits off of turn 9. If you run the short course, that's actually a pit lane there that you pull into. So they've been able to move that stricken car off the racetrack. So we certainly should be able to go green this time by. But think about, we often talk about the highs and lows of motorsport, Ryan. What about the emotions of the drivers? You're ready to go, right? You're behind the safety car, the pace car. It's leading you around. You're coming onto the back straightaway, and you're like, yeah. You got the tires warmed. You got your brakes warmed. You're ready to go. And then the call crackles in on the radio. No start this time by. You're like, oh, come on, guys. I was ready. Yeah.
Got to reset. You've got to keep the adrenaline in check and focus forward on the start to come. And it looks like it should come here on this lap. But you do feel for David Hodge and Cole Kleck. They finished 8th in the Pro-Am class yesterday. It's been, as I chronicled, an up-and-down weekend for the team. And you hate to see it end like this, especially the first weekend of the year. Everyone comes in, hope springs eternal, right? Everyone's got championship aspirations when the season starts, and then sometimes reality sets in. Well, it does for everyone, but some sooner than others.
Think of Hampus Eriksson. He got to see the checkered flag yesterday. He was the finisher for that Wayne Taylor Racing Group in the number 1. Danny Formal stood by and watched. Formal will have the honors to try to get it to the checkered flag today, but this is a very different ball game for Eriksson from the standpoint of he's going to take the green, and it's a different kind of approach to turn 1.
No question. He inherited a nice lead, a couple of seconds when he jumped in. Now, to his credit yesterday, he took that couple of second lead and he expanded it to nearly 10. So we know he's strong over a stint, but this is new for him, at least in North America. He is a veteran of the European Championship, so he brings that to the table. But as we talked about yesterday, he's the first to say, I've never experienced anything quite like Sebring. This is a whole different animal from what he's used to racing on.
Well, we talk about Lamborghini being the raging bull, and I mentioned it yesterday, that bull on this racetrack with all the bumps, it's like watching a PBR, professional bull riding contest in certain areas, but it is a handful, well over 600 horsepower, sequential shift. It does have traction control, anti-lock brakes. It is a serious race car. Speeds over 160 miles an hour down the front straight and the back straightaway, and cornering speeds close to 100 in turn 1. So a very serious machine. In fact, it's got better straight line speed than the GT3 car that runs in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, simply because of less aerodynamics on it, so a little cleaner hole in the air being pushed through. So Eriksson on the pole, ready to go just outside. Nick Persing. Persing will do this by himself. Mandatory pit stop, and that's going to be a problem for Nick Persing. Green flag waved, and immediately he changed columns expect to hear from race control on that start.
Can't do that on the start. Got to stay in column until the start-finish line. Big move from the second row. I think that's Alliance De La Torre able to jump a couple of spots, get up into the second position, side by side further back, but a picture-perfect start for Hampus Eriksson. He leads the field.
Well, and you think, how can you do that? You've raced in the series, you know the rules, but I'm going to go back to that no start on the first lap. You're ready to go, and now all of a sudden, you kind of get confused a little bit. All right, I got to get back into the mode. And if you don't get yourself right back to the exact same place and replay those rules in your mind, it's going to be a problem. The point is, in IMSA competition, you cannot change columns until you go across the start-finish line. And for Nick Persing, I think there was a very, very aggressive move to the other column as soon as the green flag waved and he realized that Eriksson had gotten a good jump.
Well, those are two teammates that shared the front row there, so perhaps they had orchestrated the start to some degree, how they had a game plan for how they wanted to run that start, but you still have to stay in your column till you get to start-finish. We'll let the stewards take a look at it and make the official ruling, but I'm with you. At first blush, at least, that one seems pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, so things settling down. It's going to take probably 2 laps to get your car back into the ideal operating zone as far as temperatures and pressures go. So we talk about the start. Car to your left, the black, blue, and pink. Green flag waves, the line is underneath him, and he is, well, I'll tell you what, 4th place car did the same thing.
Yeah, a couple cars did, and I wonder if part of the confusion comes from the fact that the clock had started on the previous lap when we had the extended pace lap, but I don't think that just because the clock starts, I think that start we just saw a moment ago is the official race start. So that's what's going to need to be sorted through here. So a little bit of confusion, but nevertheless, a nice clean start to the race at the very least.
Well, it's settled pretty quickly and pretty easily. Yep. Car 8 and car 81. That would be Nick Persing and Kiko Porto aboard the Rafa Racing number 81. 10-second penalty post-race for a false start.
Is it post-race or can they serve that at the pit window?
It just says to me 10 seconds. They may be able to serve it at the pit window. I've got to tell you, Ryan, I am not sure, but the biggest thing that I take away from that message on the bottom of the screen, in all caps underneath it, start continues to be under review. So there may have been more than just the 2 protagonists that we saw in the 8 and the 81. Meanwhile, good racing on the racetrack. Scott Huffaker just moments ago aboard his number 22, the pro entry out of World Speed that he shares with Jaden Conright. Good move into turn 7, trying to move his way forward.
And good job by Conright. Had good pace yesterday. Everyone, though, chasing those Wayne Taylor racing cars yesterday. That's going to be the challenge. 3 of the classes won by that WTR team. Can anyone steal a march on them here today? Good mix of classes inside the top 10. 3 of the 4 classes represented. In fact, Jackson Lee leading the AM class in the 10th spot overall. Really good start for him. Just his 2nd weekend in the series, 4th career start. Doing a really nice job right there, keeping pace with some of the overall front runners.
Yeah, Action Jackson, as I call him. Good job to start that car from the pole, and they really kind of came to grips. This deal came together a little bit late. And so you put it together and you try to get all the pieces moving so that you know who everybody is, but they've done a very, very good job with that. And it's one of those deals that you want to continue to improve as you move throughout the season. But there is a learning curve with all of it. He and Christopher Tosca, it's one of those deals that, like I said, you've got to learn each other, you got to learn the team and try to move your way forward.
Thanks to Steven from Lamborghini PR answering my question about how that penalty can be served. Some series, you can do it during a pit stop. Not here, it sounds like. That will be a post-race penalty, so something we'll need to keep in mind. Cars 8 and 81 will have to add 10 seconds to their time. That's worth remembering when we get down to the final couple of laps.
Usually happens as soon as they cross the line. The automated system will apply that penalty and put them in the order, so we'll have to take a look and make sure that that happens. But that is 41 minutes from now, so we've got good racing until then. We talk about pit stops and a problem for one of the cars. We talk about pit stops, Ryan, that's the 98, Sam Shee, with an issue. And the pit stop is mandatory, and it comes basically at the halfway point in the race, somewhere between 20 minutes in and 20 minutes to go. You've got to make that pit stop. And you mentioned it earlier, different times for one driver format versus two driver formats. If you elect to do this on your own, you're going to spend 96 seconds in the pits, and if you do it with a teammate, you get a little 3-second advantage there. Your pit stop can be a little shorter. There's Sam Shee with his spin. No harm, no foul. Good job of avoidance by the cars behind him.
Exactly right. That was heads-up driving by the rest of the field to cleanly get through that spin area. And to your point, 93 seconds, 96 seconds, those are the two pit lane deltas, let's call them, for the pit stops, depending on if you're a single or two driver lineup. But the thought is, if you're driving by yourself, there's no warm-up process needed. You'll be right out of the pits and should be right back in your rhythm, and that's why the single driver lineups get the additional 3 seconds in the pit lane to try and compensate for the difference between a fresh driver getting in or the same driver doing the full race distance.
This battle's working around the track right now and through turn 17, and we talk about the different classes. I mentioned the designator, we'll call it, on the windscreen and on the rear bumper, but that one on the rear bumper is probably the one that's most important to the drivers on the racetrack, especially at this point in the season. You're in there with other cars that are running on the same pace as you, especially in Pro-Am. If you've got the two faster drivers in or the two Am drivers, you need to understand, am I racing with somebody that's in my Pro-Am class, or if I'm a pro, am I racing and battling right now with somebody that's in the pro class? I don't need to be doing that. I don't need to risk things to try to get by a car that doesn't matter. So you've got to really be heads up. And I think that's the other great thing. It teaches multi-class racing just like you would find in WeatherTech.
Exactly. It's a huge part of Lamborghini Super Trofeo racing, how the classes interact when the platforms are the same. And when you're talking about a Pro-Am lineup, for instance, today we've got Kiko Porto starting in the 81 and Brendan Leach in the 69, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, these are top-line pros that will then be giving way to less experienced drivers in the second stint. So you have to keep that in mind and be patient. And then the inverse was true yesterday. Those teams elected to start their less experienced driver for race number one, and then they had to know that the stronger driver, the more experienced driver, would come back through the field in the second stint. And it makes for really interesting racing. The split strategies also mix things up, but how you manage that can have a huge outcome, determining factor, I should say, in the outcome of these races.
We did have two drivers yesterday with penalties for start infractions, so it's not anything new. And first couple of races in the season, you can understand mistakes like that happening. Hopefully we will not see any more of that as we move on. Next round is from WeatherTech Raceway at Laguna Seca, but 37 minutes still to go. So in 7.5 minutes, that pit window is going to start opening for these drivers. And it'll be interesting to see if you've got your pro driver and a Pro-Am combination in the car, or even the faster Am driver, are you going to stay out as long as you can? Great battle here between the 99 and the 52. Rocky Bulldog in the 99, and Mark Brumman. We talked yesterday about Brumman and how his driving career has progressed so much over the last couple of years. That is the battle for the lead in LB Cup. It flashes through turn one, that beautiful black and gold 99 into turn three. Multicolored Lamborghini, the black, turquoise, and pink 52 of Brumman just behind. Brumman not letting Bulldog get away. Remember, Rocky had problems in the race yesterday, so good to see him trouble-free, at least to this point.
It's a good start for Rocky. Yeah, exactly, Brian. Good start for him today. Mark Brumman was the pole sitter, actually, so he's dropped back a position in class, but he runs safely 6.5 seconds ahead of yesterday's winner in the LB Cup class. Interesting that Nick Grote finds himself back in third and is trying to get back on the tail of these two. But Rocky doing a great job absorbing that pressure here at the moment, and certainly after the disappointment yesterday, relishing the chance to get out and just turn some laps trouble-free here in the early stages.
Well, it's an absolutely gorgeous weekend for racing in Sebring. Perfect start of the season for all of the competitors here in the IMSA paddock, but especially for Lamborghini Super Trofeo. It's one of those deals that you want trouble-free and you want beautiful weather on the first weekend. It can get a little bit rainy in the middle of the year because you've got some experience underneath you, but you want this first weekend to go pretty well. And it has so far for the competitors here in Lamborghini. Hampus Eriksson and his number 1 Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2 out in front. And we talked about Wayne Taylor Racing winning in 3 classes yesterday. And you look at the strength of some of these teams, Ryan, with the number of cars that they are running out of one stable. And that data translates between every entry that they have, whether it's a pro entry to Pro-Am, Pro-Am to Am, what have you. You think about it, you get a group of drivers together with that data and they can sit and share and talk about ideas instead of just having one car and perhaps just one driver, or even one car and 2 drivers. 2 is better than 1 and 4 is better than 2, and so on and so forth.
Exactly, having so many information streams, especially coming into a team that is as technically savvy as Wayne Taylor Racing is, that's a huge benefit for them. You can always learn, and it helps them when they go out testing or they go out in practice. They can go out on different programs, try different things, and then come back together at the end of the day, put their heads together and find the best solution to whatever the problems are that they're facing. Real quick, Brian, I did want to run through a couple of penalties, additional penalties that were handed down. One was to Ray Shahi, who is penalized for being in the wrong column at the start. And then Antoine Como got a penalty as well for overtaking within his column coming to the start. And one of those was a time penalty, one was a drive-through. I can't remember which one was which, but both of those cars very much on the back foot after some problems at the initial start of this race.
Well, that's kind of the problem when somebody up front misbehaves and get the attention called on the start. All of a sudden, like I said, that message that said the start is further under review, it gets the officials' attention, and then they look at the entire field, and it's like you start getting picked out of the lineup a little further back. So perhaps that jump up front is kind of what set the stage for the cascading penalties that came down throughout the field.
Definitely possible. I think Como had the drive-through because he's shown is on an outlap now and just made a pass through the pits. So that means the time penalty, and I believe it was 30 seconds, is coming Ray Shahi's way, who runs 4th right now in LB Cup. And speaking of LB Cup, change for the lead here as Mark Brummond has found his way around Rocky T. Baldock and has grabbed the top spot in the class. We might have a look at how he did it.
Yep, this is exactly how he did it, and that is a powerful move into turn 1. Just gets the advantage there about the middle of turn 1, and Baldock does everything he can do, right, to keep him behind. But good, hard-nosed, clean racing. And I was saying, I watched Mark Brummond over the last couple of seasons just continue to improve. He runs in several different series. And the thing that impresses me about that is when you take a driver who does not do this for a living, racing is difficult enough if you're just in the same car week in and week out. But when you run in several different cities, in several different series, in different paddocks, and you move from one type of car to the other, that even shows better what it is that you're doing, because it's not just about driving a car, it's about driving this car, and they all have different personalities, and a Lamborghini certainly has its own.
And for over the last 6-7 years, Mark Brummond, he's driven everything from front-wheel drive touring cars to big horsepower, rear-wheel drive Trans Am cars, GT cars of a bunch of different descriptions. Ran a partial season in the VP Challenge Championship last year in the GSX class, which is effectively GT4 cars that are used there. And so he does bring a lot of experience to the table in various equipment, but to your point, these Super Trofeo cars are absolutely beasts, and that's part of the fun, of course, of the championship, but it does take a little bit of time to adapt to them. It looks like Mark Brummond has done that with aplomb.
And I love the sponsor on the side of the car. Tons of gas. I have no idea what that is or what that means, but it looks good on the side of the car like that. And it's one of those deals that well representing obviously the sponsor, but also Lamborghini Philadelphia and Lamborghini Greenwich as well. And that's the other thing of note. Lamborghini is involved in this series, not just because that's the car that everybody drives, but there is a dealers championship as well, and dealer watch parties on the weekends, and there is a lot of pride at stake for the dealers in this as well.
I love that element of it, that the dealerships around the country do provide some support, and they've got a stake in this too. It's one fantastic element of the championship, and to help build that motorsports community when you have those communal events like the watch parties and things of that nature. Great introduction. I mean, if you're walking into a Lamborghini dealership, you already like awesome cars, so why not transition that to enjoying watching some awesome race cars that also happen to be Lamborghinis?
Absolutely, and I think this car, even though it is a race car, it has so much street car in it. It speaks for the exotic supercar that Lamborghini is known for, right? And so it is the quintessential what wins on Sunday sells on Monday. You can drive a Lamborghini or hope to drive a Lamborghini on the street one day, and it's a very, very close cousin or brother even of what runs here in Lamborghini Super Trofeo.
How many brands, though, can basically roll out a modified, but not by that much, version of their street car and get this much performance? I mean, it speaks to the Lamborghini ethos, right? That the car you find in the showroom is pretty much ready to go already. And I mean, that's why it's such a desired car. Anywhere you go around the world, everyone knows the Lamborghini brand and what it stands for.
Pit window just opened about 45 seconds ago, and the first taker is the 8 of Nick Persing, looking for his pit box. And remember, if you're a single driver format, as Nick is, he'll have to spend 96 seconds on pit road. They won't change tires. There is no fueling. The crew does go to work, and they'll let some air pressure out. It's one of the things that you can do, and the tires have gotten hot. The pressures have built. That takes handling away, and so letting that air out is something that you want to do and bring some of the handling back. Why the 3-second difference between 2-driver and single-driver format? Well, it's just about track knowledge, isn't it, Ryan? If you've been out there by yourself, you know what you've got, you know what the track's like.
You're already in your rhythm, you're ready to go. I think it's sensible to do that if you're going to allow both single and 2-driver lineups. There has to be some way to equalize it, and it seems like this has been a pretty good system through the years to do so. Pit lane's a busy place. Interesting, the overall leaders, I'm not sure they would have come in anyway, given the strategy that they're on, but they didn't have the opportunity. They weren't quite in that mandatory window just yet. So it's kind of funny how that works out sometimes. You run mid-pack, and you might actually get the first bite at the apple in the pit lane just with the way that the timing works out.
And once that pit stop is done, you need to get out and maintain your speed down pit lane. You can't jump out in front of a competitor and then slow to a crawl down pit lane. You've got to maintain the pit speed as Persing, one of the first to pit, first to lead. You've got to maintain that proper speed. If you jump out there and slow down to not be short on your pit stop, they're going to penalize you for that. That pit speed is maintained and monitored all the way through the pit lane.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So you can't take advantage of the system. You've got to be on it with the driver change, and you've got to get the timing right to release the car at the right time. If you go too early, you're sunk, quite frankly, because they do watch that speed, and if there's any variation down the pit lane, you're going to get called in for a penalty there. Here is the leading car, or the erstwhile leading car, Hampus Eriksson from pole position. Really good start. Danny Formal will get in to finish this off. This car has been the quickest in every session so far this weekend, and or the race winner, as was the case in race 1 yesterday. They're looking to totally sweep it if they can get the win here today.
Yeah, the strength of this team, and we talked about it, with the number of entries that they field, it really allows them to have great data. And then you take a driver like Danny Formal and Hampus Eriksson, but certainly Formal, 2-time champion in Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America. He has so much experience in type. Then they're able to work with that, and then they pass that information throughout the team, and everybody benefits. They have been, I hate to say this, perfect this weekend, perfect to this point. I don't want the commentators' curse to bite them. And we should say perfect in Lamborghini Super Trofeo, because Danny Formal did have a problem in his Lamborghini for Wayne Taylor Racing in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. with a big crash in turn 1, but in Super Trofeo, they have been flawless.
I think that was the story of the day yesterday, quite frankly. He had his big crash, backed it into the fence, and within 90 minutes of that, had to jump in the Super Trofeo car and go qualifying, and he totally put it behind him, put the pedal down, and put the car on pole. I was super impressed with the mental fortitude of Danny Formal, and now he just has to finish the job here. 25 minutes still on the clock. It's Kiko Porto who has cycled to the lead, but this is a Pro-Am class car that is starting their pro driver. They're likely to keep him out as long as possible. Now, the risk they take is if a yellow should come out, that could really cost them track position, but as long as it stays green, this is playing right into their hands. Now, keep in mind, this car still has a penalty coming post-race, but it's Kiko's job to keep his head down, build as much of a gap as he possibly can, and then let the chips fall where they may.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say, it's really all they can do, right? Go out there, extend the lead as far as you possibly can, and hope that when you hand the car off to your teammate, Monteiro, that he can kind of maintain that lead. That's a tall order to ask, certainly with drivers like Danny Formal in the field, as good as that car has been. But if you can extend that lead and get it out there and then keep it there, perhaps you're not going to lose as many positions when that 10-second penalty is handed down at the end of the race. You know, it's funny. I kind of have a love-hate relationship. It used to be that if you ran afoul of that rule, you did a drive-through penalty. And then they were like, well, let's soften that a little bit. But the only good thing about a drive-through penalty is you can get it out of the way. If you get into this race and you can't get it out of the way, and it can only be served at post-race, and there's a full course caution at the end of the race, you may be sitting in second place and you had a 15-second, 20-second, 30-second lead even over the nearest car behind you. But if it ends under yellow, the nearest car behind you is now a second back, and when you go tumbling 10 seconds down the order, you may find yourself 30th.
Yeah, that's a disaster if that happens when you carry those time penalties to the end of the race, and if the race ends behind a safety car. That's kind of why I like seeing it being able to be served during the pit stop, but problems here for the 37.
Wilson around at turn 7. We see problems there a lot. We'll call it a hot spot because it is one of those areas that tends to bite you. It's the slowest corner on the racetrack, but one that is still super challenging, and it's one of those deals that you've got to get sorted out. Let's see how it happens on his own.
It was on an outlap, though, Brian. I will say this. Clay Wilson right out of the pits. I mean, it's not like they're cold tires or anything. It's the same set of tires that go the whole distance, but we talk about the outlaps, how important they are. I think that's what caught him out.
Well, and if you bleed pressures down a little bit, it's going to be a little bit different car. Clay Wilson, a single driver entry, so it's one of those deals that you would think, well, he, quote, should have known. But when you do that air pressure adjustment, the car is going to be a little bit different that first lap out. And as you said, you know, you are preached to, talk to on the radio, in lap. Come on, push on this in lap, push on this in lap, push on this out lap. Because you can make time there. But as we just witnessed, you can lose a lot of time if you push too hard.
That's the risk you run, but there is time to be found there. This is Kiko Porto. He's in the pits, so Nicholas Montero now aboard the car for the Rafa Racing team. This team run by Smooge Racing, which we've seen run a lot in various championships over the last couple of years.
And Ryan, what I've been impressed with is what this team, Rafa Racing, Smooge Racing, have been able to do across the different platforms where they're running. A lot of times with expansion and deeper involvement, you spread yourself too thin. And I think they've done a spectacular job of making sure that they've expanded, but the performance has expanded with the expansion and the footprint of the program.
Yeah, spot on. They've done a really good job as they have broadened their horizons and partnered up the Rafa Racing team with Smooge. Now, Smooge is in series that it's not had experience in before, like this one, or running an LMP3 car in VP Challenge, but they've been up for the challenge, no pun intended, here to this point. And the only exception, they have a Well, they have a program in another single make series that they did outsource, but by and large, they're doing all of this in-house, and it is really remarkable what they've been able to build in a short amount of time.
Absolutely. 41, Mark Miller now on pit lane, and they stretched that just about as far as you could. 55 seconds left in the pit window when Miller came to pit lane, and that's what you want to do. He is the faster of the two drivers in that car. I'll hand it over to Paul Nimshoff. And you want the faster driver in the car for as long as you possibly can. See what kind of gains you can make. 77, Keon Tandon now on pit lane as well. And again, you're trying to keep that driver that you think has the better performance out there for as long as you can keep them out there, so that they can continue to pick away and try to increase the lead over the cars in class behind.
That's the strategy, and now we just wait to see how it plays out. But for these guys, the ones that wanted to run long with their stronger driver starting today, this has played out perfectly for them, because it's been, outside of the delayed start to the race, it's been green all the way to this point. That's allowed them to build gaps. Yesterday, teams that were trying that strategy, it didn't work for them, because we did have a couple of interruptions early on. They weren't able to build those gaps for the second driver to nurse to the finish. So you just don't know the way the race is going to play out. You look at the probabilities, and then you roll the dice and hope for the best.
Well, pit window is closed. All the cars did get their pit stop done within the window, so that is good news. Good news for Danny Formal. With Mark Miller coming to pit road, he takes over the lead, and one car around backwards in turn 7, but one car leaving turn 7. That means 2 entered, 1 left. We'll have to see if we can take a look and see what happens.
Well, the car that ended up spun was Matteo Cederman.
He does it on his own.
Looks that way.
When we got the shot, it was right about there, and I saw the second car leaving, and I was like, well, that's going to be a problem, but not the case. And we got a message on the bottom of the timing screen: pit exit car 88 under review. I'm going to wonder if that is the blend line at pit out. You're allowed 2 tires, and I would hope that that would be the left side tires, over that line as you're leaving the pit lane. Any more than that before you get to the end, and there's going to be a problem. So we'll have to see if the 88 ran afoul of that, and a problem for the 37.
Yeah, that's right. Not sure what caused this one. This is Clay Wilson, who had the spin earlier and now is limping, it would seem, back to the pits. He has the hazard lights on, so something has gone amiss for Clay here. But back to the 88, that was Christopher Tasca, who just climbed aboard, starting his stint. Whoa, closing rate. That was frightening. But that car, that 88, had been leading in the M class with Jackson Lee. It's now dropped back a little bit, but had a really good, strong start to this race.
At this time of day, the racetrack is probably very different than it was yesterday. Even though it was the same time of day, you look at the number of events that we've had in the last 24 hours, a lot more rubber down and warmer today. So that means the racetrack is a little bit warmer. So it's a very different racetrack. So when a driver like Chris Tasca gets in, doesn't have a world of experience, you can see how you can have an issue early on in your stint. And obviously they've got a good car underneath him, and Chris just needs to focus forward. I'm sure Jackson Lee on the radio with him saying, all right, you got this. We've got a good car. We know we do. We started up front. We ran well. Just focus. Bad things can happen to other people as well, and certainly if you don't focus, you're going to have more bad things happen to you. So let's just get back on the bull, so to speak, and get going.
They had a great day yesterday. Chris told me earlier in the weekend he wanted his first podium in Super Trofeo, and he got it. That was a big deal for him and the Fly Alliance team. He's got the family watching on at home, I know. So they're on the back foot a little bit here. Still waiting to see what the ruling is from race control. But they've got yesterday, Saturday's race, certainly to be very, very proud of to start their season.
I think the great thing is, and a big problem, this is the 88. So Tasca had one small issue, but this is a big issue, Ryan. Full course caution.
You said it. Don't let a little issue become a big issue, and we don't know for sure what happened yet. Amazingly, that car's still capable of moving, but that has been in the barrier in a big, big way.
Yeah, they're not going to let him move. You see the IMSA AMR rapid response Porsche there, medical staff on board. They're going to make sure that he is okay. He was trying to drive away, so you would think he had the wherewithal to move the car, but with that much damage as an official, you don't want that car on your racetrack trying to limp back. You don't know what kind of fluids, what kind of parts are going to come out of it. And obviously your concern is for the safety of the driver. A big hit like that, you want to make sure the driver's okay. Let's take a look. Turn 1. It's interesting because he doesn't drop a wheel at the exit of the corner. In fact, the only thing that I could think is that by keeping his hands turned and somewhat tight, keeping the car pinched as we call it, he just lights up those rear hand cook tires a little bit. Yes, they do have traction control. That's all well and good, but you've got 620 plus horsepower in a Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2. So by keeping the hands turned and perhaps going back to the throttle, he also had traffic around him, right behind him, steals your attention away a little bit, and you go from one small mistake, and then obviously this is a much, much bigger problem, and we're under full course.
Safety team right there, and look, great to see Christopher climbing out of the car under his own power. His wife Christina will be relieved to see that, of course. Big supporter of him and his racing, but he won't like what he has to see here as he walks around the car and surveys the damage. Unfortunately, Brian, that was a big one.
It's a big hit, but I'll tell you what, the tires did exactly what they were supposed to do. Those tire walls, they're like a safer barrier. I mean, basically they function the same. They collapse and absorb energy, and I think Sebring does such a great job, and racetracks all around the country have gone to this banding on the tires, and that keeps the tires together and it helps them absorb energy. Here's a look at it again over the bump, and then the car just breaks away pretty quickly. Like I said, he's not using all the road there, and perhaps that's the problem. By keeping those hands turned, a lot of times if you'll free up the car and open your hands a little bit, take some of the cornering load out, it keeps it a little bit more stable. Not exactly sure though, but I am sure of the outcome, and it's not a good one. But like I was saying, Ryan, the banding on the tires is really the magic. Tire barriers have been around for a long time, but as we move to that heavy conveyor belt, almost like banding on them, and you can see they're bolted into the tire packs that are there. It just absorbs the energy, and it does such a great job of moving the energy out of the car and away from the driver and into those tire walls on impact.
You'd always rather hit the tires than the Armco or a concrete wall, that's for sure. And in the night practice for WeatherTech just last night, we saw a Ferrari go off and get into the tire barrier, and it was able to drive away. The team even said that we didn't have to replace the body panels. It was really remarkable. So, yeah, if you get to choose, that's where you want to go in.
Hey, hi to you too, fans waving to the cameras, and yep, we get a little cell phone video here. Others enjoying a beverage, standing by the fence, watching Lamborghini Super Trofeo, and fans all around this racetrack, and it really is a different feel than almost every other racetrack we go to. Hey guys, enjoying the day, and a cold beverage there in the chairs. A little shade there too with the awning that was there. I think the only other racetrack that we go to that I think has a similar feel, just because of the camping aspect of it, the length of the WeatherTech race that's there, would be Petit Le Mans. Daytona is magical in its own right, but everybody's on the infield, right? So everybody's inside the racetrack, everybody's on the infield, and everybody that doesn't watch racing that I talk to will go, hey, I watched some of Daytona. I didn't see a lot of fans in the stands. Well, this year you saw pretty many. They had a spectacular crowd, but that's not what Daytona's about. Daytona's about the infield, right? Here, they're fans everywhere. In the paddock, Green Park, they're everywhere. They lined up probably 10 days ago to line up motorhomes to get in and get the spot that they wanted. Petit Le Mans is a lot the same way. Really, any IMSA WeatherTech weekend is spectacular as far as generating interest and attendance, but it's just something special about Sebring.
Brian, I love this place. I love this event, and it's the fans that make it what it is. If you ever have the chance to come, take an hour or 3 to walk around the infield and just soak in the ambiance. Let's call it ambiance. How's that sound?
I like it.
I mean, there's nothing else like this place, especially as the sun starts to set during the 12-hour. It is just a special, special place. I like to say, you know, when people ask, you know, what IMSA race should I go to? This is the one that I always recommend, because for me, this is sports cars in their natural environment, right? They are in their natural habitat here. This is everything that's great about North American endurance racing.
Well, I think, too, the other thing that makes it special is the history here, right? I mean, you think about 73 years of the Sebring 12-hour, right? And it's just a special place. The history of this being a B-17 World War II training base and how it became a racetrack. And it's obviously been through multiple iterations and layouts, but the foundation of it remains, and that is the passion for sports car racing, and that's what brings all of these fans out.
Well, we should give our thanks to Alec Ullman, who is the gentleman who identified this site as a potential host for an endurance sports car race similar to the 24 Hours of Le Mans. He was an aeronautical engineer. The Ullman Straight from turn 16 to turn 17 is named for Alec Ullman, and this was his brainchild. This is what he dreamed up, bringing the best sports car teams, drivers, manufacturers from all over the world, bring them to Sebring, Florida, and put on a show for 12 hours. And it's been a recipe that you just can't improve over the years. That's why we've been doing this for 73 years.
Well, and I know that you'll find this hard to believe, Ryan, but I have not been coming here for 73 years.
No?
I was not here at the first one. No, I was not. But I have been here since the mid to late 80s and been to the event, broadcast the event, tested here, worked here for Skip Barber, the racing school organization. And there's just always something about it, whether you're coming for the race, whether you're coming to test, whether you're watching a race here or you're on the premises and you're involved in it. It's just really kind of a special place. Now, that gas pipeline that you were wondering about, where is it? Well, we don't know, because these youngsters have removed the flags that were marking it. So when they come back next week, be careful where you dig. The markers are gone.
Well, maybe we got our next IMSA flag waiver,
well,
right?
There you go.
Next starter there. He's getting some practice in at an early age. It does look like, though, the lights were off on the safety car, so I think we're getting close to a restart. And one thing I do want to highlight here with just 8 minutes to go, this was not good news for the two cars that had those time penalties coming their way, because it's condensed the field. Nick Persing, third overall, third in the pro class, has that 10-second time penalty coming. Would have lost about 2 positions, I think, the way they were running before the yellow. As it stands now, it would be a lot more than that. And the other is the leader in Pro-Am, Nick Montero. That's the other car that we know has a penalty coming for the infraction at the start. So both of those cars will need to go, and try and build as much of a gap as possible in the final 7 minutes and change to mitigate the damage.
Those youngsters with the flags reminded me of Nolan Crowley. I don't know if you know Nolan, Ryan, kid that used to sit in the grandstands at Watkins Glen and flag every session. He had his flags, and he flagged every session, and Nolan's still very involved in motorsport to this day. He's not a kid anymore. He's well into his 20s, but it's just great to see the involvement of the entire family. They're in the start zone. Danny Formal can go if he wants to, and he waits late this time. Yesterday, they pulled the trigger early, but today, boom, he waits, and we're under green again at Sebring, and you can see drivers trying to weave back and forth, clean that rubber that they may have picked up, the clag as we call it, off of their Hankook tires, and a problem already for the 65 on the restart.
It's Ray Shaheen, not the first issue, unfortunately, this weekend for the 65, but this one, he's able to continue on. Looks like he's headed, though, straight for the pits. Let's see if we can figure out what happened.
Gets in there, spins on his own, I think, kind of like we talked about with Chris Tasca. He's down there on the bumps, and anytime you're down there on the bumps and you're in early like that, you're going to have to add a lot of steering to get you through the corner. The last thing you want to do when you're going over bumps is add steering. I think he gets down in kind of no man's land and loses the rear end, and around he goes. No harm, no foul. Not sure why he came straight to the pit lane, but that's where he is. Oh, interesting. Penalty for the car 88 being handed down. We talked earlier about they were examining pit exit, and he will get a penalty, pit exit impeding drive-through.
Oof, that's a big one. We also have a penalty, a drive-through for a short pit stop for car 26. And then we saw the 46 of Lance Bergstein have a spin as well. So he drops down the order. No shortage of excitement here on the restart.
No, and for the 88, that's Chris Tosca. So obviously that penalty is not going to be served. But the point of it is you've got to always be watching what's going on. And looking at short pits now, car 26 will have a short pit stop and a drive-through, and the 20, is that the 28?
Yes.
Short pit stop. Now, one of them is a drive-through, and one of them will be a time penalty, and the reason is if you're shorter than a second, you're going to get a drive-through penalty. If you're over a second short, I should say, you're going to get a drive-through penalty. If you're under a second short, there is a multiplier. I believe it is 3. And so it'll be 3 times whatever you are short. So if you're going to be short, don't be super short, because if you are, you're coming through pit lane. Formal back on it, and Bamber now behind the wheel of the 29 is going to try to have something to say about that. He shares that car, Will Bamber. If you recognize the name Bamber, yeah, I'm sure you do, and that is the brother of Earl, Will Bamber, behind the wheel of the 29, sharing that car with Elias De La Torre. Just 1 second back after that restart. We'll see if he's got anything that he can show for that. Nick Persing third in the order as well, but Persing's going to have that penalty, correct?
Exactly right, yes. That was one of the 2 on the initial start. He was our outside front row starter, remember, and ducked out a column there at the beginning. So, you know, you'd hope Will Bamber was aware of this, that yes, this is a battle for position on track, but as long as he stays within 10 seconds, it doesn't matter if he gives this up. So you don't want to take too much risk here if you're Will Bamber, because even if that car gets by, there's a pretty good chance you've still got second spot on lockdown.
So more contact on the racetrack. The 42 and the 98 having a little bit of a tussle. Take a look. Just a little push and shove there in turn 5, and and then the 98. Yeah, so Rocky Bulldog involved in that, and the 99 gets in there with the 42, and they're kind of a little side-by-side contact. I believe it must be Kevin Matt. No, it's Adrian Kunzel behind the wheel of the 42. He gets pushed a little wide, and then the 98 kind of gets surprised by that. Pops him in the rear end there at the exit of turn 5.
And that's Sam Shee, I think, that got into the back of the other car, both cars that looked like picked up some damage, but good news, they only have to make it another 2 minutes, 40 seconds and change. Another penalty, it's a warning. There was a car that didn't maintain the speed on the restart, but it's just a warning, so we carry on.
Carry on indeed, and that's exactly what Danny Formal is trying to do as he moves forward. And we talked about Will Bamber understanding where Nick Persing is. Persing's still just right there behind him, but I think he had a really good point. This is where the team comes in, and you really got to understand who you're racing with. We talked about that earlier as things really mixed up after this restart, and you see the different class cars there. The 81 with the yellow banners in the Pro-Am category, and he's got Pro Class cars trying to work his way through. So you got to understand what's going on, and a lot of times maybe you don't want to let the car by because you're trying to work on the car in front of you and get by them, but at other times you got to realize, hey, maybe if I let them go, I can use them and follow through when he makes the next pass. So got to be aware of not only is there someone around you, but what class are they in?
That's so difficult, though. You really rely on the team to communicate that to you. Yes, there are markers on the car, but these drivers have a lot to manage just driving these machines, and sometimes I think incumbent upon the teams just to make sure the driver is fully aware of the situation. I think what we were watching as well was Nick Montero dropping back a little bit. Might have had a change for the lead in Pro-Am. It was really, really close between Montero, McIntosh, and Trinka, and we'll have to check that here. Coming to the white flag, but as we do that, a car in the barrier.
And that's a big hit, and there's damage you can see to the rear wing as Danny Vermael through 17 with 48 seconds on the clock, so he will see the white flag. Question is, are they going to be able to cover the car that has made impact with just a local yellow, or will they feel the need to go full course yellow here with the final lap underway?
That was Anthony McIntosh in the barrier. He was fighting for the lead in the Pro-Am class at the time. Not sure what led to it. Maybe we can find out here.
On his own. Just on his own, coming through, I believe that's 14, and gets to the exit of the corner, just loses the back, and super high speed area of the racetrack, and just cannot get it slowed down once it gets to the grass. Little bit of concrete and tarmac before he got to the wall, but not enough to scrub the speed. Big hit and smoke off the back of his car as it sits in the tire wall.
And full course yellow, Brian.
I think they're going to have to move emergency vehicles to that car. It was a pretty big hit. Obviously, you're concerned about the driver. Good to see him moving inside the car, trying to get some systems turned off, it looks like. It's Anthony McIntosh, as you said, moving in the car, but that's a big hit backwards, and the biggest concern is the flame that I see, and that's why I said they're going to have to move emergency equipment to get to McIntosh and get that fire taken care of. I think he may know it's there. The crew may have called him and said, hey, you got to get out. So that is going to lock things down, the order when they went full course caution. Have to see how it plays. So it should be coming to checker this lap for Danny Vermael. Not the way you want to end it, but they have had a picture perfect weekend. Good to see McIntosh climb into the AMR rapid response vehicle, that Porsche Cayenne. And they'll take him to the medical center. Anytime you make contact, even the lightest contact, or certainly heavy contact, they're going to take you to the medical center for review. And what is this?
That was live.
That was live.
Al Mori with a spin out of turn 16, catching up with the pack here behind effectively the safety car, at least under full course yellow conditions, coming around to the checkered flag.
But there's no reason to try to catch up because the field has been woed down. What a perfect weekend. You can't say that often, but Danny Vermael, he takes the checkered here yesterday. Hampus Eriksson was in the #1 car at the checkered yesterday, and Wayne Taylor Racing, an absolutely perfect weekend here in Lamborghini Super Trofeo in the pro category.
Clean sweep for them. Topped every single session, did Vermael and Eriksson. And now, remember, we talked about a late yellow being problematic for those that had penalties coming. We've seen that play out. Persing from, I think, 3rd on the road, ends up 6th in class, 9th overall. And similar issues for Montero, ends up 5th in Pro-Am. Winner in Pro-Am, by the way, how about it? Darius Trinka brings the car home. What a great result for him and for the entire team there. Great operation, Reardon Racing, Darius Trinka and Tadas Karlinskas, who has been quick this weekend, but they get rewarded here in race 2 with a Pro-Am victory.
And Wayne Taylor Racing again and Am with the 10. A great run for that team all weekend long. Glenn McGee, Doyle behind the wheel at the checkered flag. And like we said, there was a lot of hardware handed out to Wayne Taylor Racing yesterday, but Graham Doyle and Glenn McGee, they'll make it 2 for 2 on the weekend.
And we didn't see how it happened, but Nick Grote, who was 3rd for most of the race in LB Cup, he ended up coming through, getting around both Baldock and Drummond, and he ends up with a sweep of the weekend in LB Cup, so a great start to his campaign.
Drama, Ryan, drama. I mean, in the closing laps here, I mean, had a couple of big incidents in the last 10 minutes of this race, and then even some incidents once the full course caution came out, as we saw the 77 of Al Mori go flying off there in turn 16 under full course caution. The safety crew on site very, very quickly for the 69 and gotten that little bit of flame that was in the back of that Lamborghini taken care of, but disappointment there for sure for Anthony McIntosh, who was behind the wheel at the time of that incident. He and Brendan Leach had a good run yesterday, but not going to be able to repeat it today, obviously, with the problems that they had.
No, that's too bad, but that's the way it goes sometimes. That was a wild one, trying to sift through what we saw. All of it packed into just 50 minutes somehow. That had a lot going on. However, it all happened behind the #1 car. I'm not sure they would realize just how hectic of a race it was. They were in firm control, starting from pole. Hampus Eriksson, what a debut here in North America. We knew he was quick in these Super Trofeo cars, but how would he adapt to the new environment, the new tracks, the new continent racing here in North America for the first time? I'd say he passed every test so far, and Danny Formal as well was certainly up to the challenge.
So, strange way to end one, certainly not the way you want to, and as you very rightly pointed out, Ryan, those penalties that happened at the drop of the green flag, very, very costly for those cars involved, and it's one of those things, you know what the rule is, and you saw some people run afoul of it yesterday, but we as race car drivers don't always learn, right? So we saw those mistakes made again. But for Danny Formal, Hampus Eriksson, Wayne Taylor Racing, like we said, it was a perfect weekend. Led every session, on the pole for both races, won both races. Those weekends don't happen often.
No, and I think that's something that the Bamber De La Torre combination, the Huffaker-Conrad combination, on down the line, that's something they can take heart in, especially for Bamber and De La Torre, second on both days. They were right there in the mix, just missing a little bit of something, but these things will come and go as the season progresses.
Absolutely. Good battles throughout, and we talked about Nick Grote with his win in LB Cup. Always stories to talk about, and you're going to have that with 4 different classes here in Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America. Some problems for Andy Lee and Slade Stewart with the crash in qualifying. They were not able to participate this weekend, so they'll be shown there back in the 36th position. But don't worry, if you're a fan of the number 14, it will be back, I promise, at the next round. So make sure you join us for Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America. Remember, it's a 6-race championship, 5 of them on North American soil. Plenty more racing to come this year, and the fans on the hill certainly getting a good shot of the racing throughout the weekend. Congratulations to all of our winners, and there's more racing to come from Sebring this weekend, so make sure you catch that. AMR safety team giving thumbs up to all the drivers. It was an exciting one. Ryan, what do you think?
I think that was a great start to the 2025 season. Excited to see what's to come. Some fresh faces on the scene that announced their arrival, but really strong grid once again.
WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca next up for Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America, May 9th through 11th. For Ryan Marine, I'm Brian Till. We'll see you there.